of testing. And so what I try to convey to people, I think the biggest stumbling block for a lot of people is if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and making decisions on your own in real time and not so much worrying about the consequences. Because I
What's your, Eiric, what, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
What would you say, like, over the years of doing this, like, making offers, obviously, number one, but
Yeah.
past making offers, where do you think, from all the students that you worked with as they came through this group, what would you think the other biggest tripping point is, or where people
Yeah,
get
it's
tripped
gonna
up,
sound
essentially?
kind of cliche, and it seems like, and I think I'm a perfect case in point. I came into this a bit older, I guess, maybe than the average person. I'm 44 today. I started this when I was about 38, 39 years old. And I think, and I've had discussions with Shiv about this, and look, so I had about 15, 16 years of what I call the employee indoctrination process, right? Where, and no matter what position I had, I did well. I excelled in whatever company I was in and, made okay money, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, I had a boss and a plan laid out for me. In other words,
Right,
I was
right.
I was following someone else's agenda. What I'm trying to get at is, you know, any program, any vertical you could possibly get into, it's sexy to say I want to be an entrepreneur. It's sexy to say I want to be in business for myself. That everybody says that, right? What I've noticed over the years, however, is the mentality of being able to make a decision on your own without having validation from a massive number of people. In other
That's
words,
right.
if it takes 6 months, a year to get, and I get these messages all the time. Look, what do you think is a good niche, Eiric? Well, I don't know. I didn't do the due diligence. I haven't done the due diligence on it. How can I
And especially in that
possibly
market,
know?
yeah.
And how can I possibly know if chiropractors in Anchorage, Alaska is a good niche? I have no freaking clue. That's like a physician trying to diagnose a patient without doing any kind of testing. And so what I try to convey to people, I think the biggest stumbling block for a lot of people is if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and making decisions on your own in real time and not so much worrying about the consequences. Because I try to, as I told you earlier, I try to paint this picture for people. Look, we're not dealing with rocket science here. A plane is not going to crash if we make a bad decision. There is no mistake in lead generation that cannot be corrected later. There's nothing. You pick a bad niche, screw it. Pick another one. You pick the wrong client, fire them. Go down the road to Johnny or Susie. So I try to convey to people is success loves speed. And if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to be a businessman or a businesswoman, you're going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and just making some damn decisions in real time and kind of worrying about the consequences later, because there is no consequence that's going to be bad enough to derail your
Mm.
entire project. It's just not. So move, and just switch that mentality up. It takes some time. It takes some effort. I'm case in point. You've been tough love with me too over the years because you had to get me to the point where I was able to do that. You don't need to check up on me every day
No.
because my mind is basically right at this point, right? But it took some time to get there. So my biggest thing is change the circuitry of your brain to actually get comfortable making decisions, which can be very tough for some people because they're used to being told 8 hours a day specifically what they got to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. I see this over and over and over again, not only with struggling entrepreneurs, but even like in everyday life with just how people make decisions about anything. Because how you do one thing is generally how you do all things.
Yep.
So are you someone that has been, or you maybe have lacked that assertiveness, or maybe someone's taken away that power from you? Like I think there's other things too, right? There's program
Sure.
responses is a real thing. So when you get whipped every time you make a decision, maybe you're in a relationship and someone was really dominating or whatever the case might be, these things bleed into other areas of your life.
Yep.
And so if we're not cognizant that these things will have a massive effect on your guys' growth in this business, when you get to the point where you're not willing to go into a niche without the validation of someone from the group, that's not a good place to be. Now, with that being said as well, the group's there for the reason. The group is there for you guys to be
Sure.
able to look and listen and read. But one thing, so I was trying to read. I got Tori's phone trying to help me because I'm blind as a freaking bat. But I'm so blind. But I saw someone said, "Hey, I was just more comfortable going into the more cliche niches right off the bat." Like, what do you say to something like that, Eiric? Like, what do you say to that? Even though the recommendation would be say, "Hey, the
Yeah.
riches are in the obscure niches. Get out of your comfort zone." But hey, it's more comfortable for me to go in that right now. What would you coach there?
I think a lot of people are looking for the proverbial quick hit win. In other words, and I say this to a lot of people too on their way into the program, I'm like, even the most enthusiastic person who joins this program is going to have what I call the little doubt devil perched on their shoulder, right? Yeah, oh, it works for Eiric, it works for Shiv, it works for Maggie Chang, it works for this person. It's not going to work for me. For somehow with me, something's going to happen that's going to make it go wrong, even with the most enthusiastic person, if that makes sense. And so what I think a lot of people do is to validate the process, they just go down the cliche route, which I guess initially in some cases, can work because you want a quick hit win, you want a low hanging fruit situation, you want to validate the investment you just made. But
Mm-hmm.
as someone once told me, I can't remember who it is now, but a pretty wealthy individual, he's like, Eiric, you got to remember one thing. The money is always where the masses are not. In other words, if you see everybody in a herd sheet, because here's the thing that I've discovered: if you came on one of these lives and you said, you know what, I spent the entire day and I've determined that the Anchorage, the chiropractic space in Anchorage, Alaska is that you're going to make a shit ton of money. We'd have a million people going to the same city, into the same
Right.
niche, because in the back of our minds, we're all programmed to be sheep, right? And so my thing is okay, it's always easy to revert to the median. But if you wanna really get outside your comfort zone, because and I say this all the time too, we are neurosurgeons in here, not general practitioners. And I think a lot of us lose sight of the fact, because we're in here, that our skill set is literally so advanced that on day one in here, we know more than 99.9% of the market does. But
Yep.
because we're in it, we can't see it. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense? And so we
Mm-hmm.
shortchange ourselves. And so, it all goes back, and it's so cliche to say it, but it's the circuitry of the brain. It's the willingness to swim upstream and go against the grain and do what others do not want to do. Does that make sense? I'm willing to get in the car and drive around and take a look at shit and take photos and Google stuff. I'm willing to do all that grunt work. I'm not special. I'm just willing to 10x the effort of a lot of people.